Today, we are digging into the story of Ada Lovelace. But this isn't going to be your average history lesson. Nope. This is a deep dive into a way of thinking, a mindset for innovation that is more relevant now than ever. We're going to see how the world's very first coder saw the future and how you can learn to see yours. Just let that quote hang in the air for a second. I mean, picture it. The year is 1843. You're in some dusty London study, and in front of you is this massive, gleaming machine of brass and steam. It's just a jungle of gears and levers, all clicking and whirring. And its job? Simple, to be the best calculator ever made. That's all anyone else saw. But one person, she saw something else entirely. So on one side, you had the machine's inventor, the brilliant Charles Babbage. For him, his analytical engine was the ultimate number cruncher, a practical tool for practical problems. But then there was Ada Lovelace. She looked at the very same machine, the same blueprints, and she saw a creative partner. She looked right past all the metal and steam and saw a future where that machine could weave music and art. And this right here, this is the light bulb moment that basically kicked off the digital age. She understood something fundamental. A machine that processes symbols doesn't actually care what those symbols mean. A number could be, well, a number, or it could be a musical note, or a color, or a word. She realized the machine's true power wasn't what it was, a calculator. It was what it could do, process any kind of information you could imagine. So how did she make that incredible leap? Well, we're going to break it down. We'll look at that defining moment, the inner war that shaped her mind, her unique philosophy, how she put it to work, her incredible legacy, and, most importantly, how you can apply her genius to your own life. Let's get into it. All right, section 1, the machine that could sing. This is about that one flash of insight, that moment where one person's imagination literally laid out the roadmap for the next century and a half of technology. It was the birth of a whole new way of seeing the world. And we're going to call that new way of thinking the Lovelace Code. It's this core belief, right, that technology isn't just about math or engineering. At its very best, technology is a product of pure imagination. The only limit to what we can build is what we can imagine first. Which leads to the big question, doesn't it? A vision like that doesn't just pop out of nowhere. How does a person's mind get wired to see a future that no one else can even begin to fathom? Well, the answer is kind of crazy. It was forged in a brutal, lifelong conflict that started the day she was born. And that brings us to section 2, a war of the mind. See, to really get Ada's genius, you have to understand the battle that raged inside her. A constant tug of war between wild creativity and cold, hard logic. And this battle, it started with her parents. In one corner, you have the ghost of her dad, the infamous poet Lord Byron. You know, the guy who stood for all things wild, imaginative, maybe a little dangerous. And in the other corner, her mother, Lady Byron. She was so terrified Ada would inherit her father's poetic madness that she came up with a plan to stamp it out. And her weapon of choice? Math. And let's be clear, this wasn't fun, happy math class. This was a systematic attempt to erase a part of who she was. Her childhood was basically a monastic regime of math, a grueling, relentless schedule of lessons designed to cure her of her imagination. Even when she was sick, even when she was paralyzed for long stretches of time, the lessons continued. She was, for all intents and purposes, a prisoner of logic. But here is the most beautiful, amazing twist in her entire story. The plan? It backfired, big time. The very thing that was supposed to cage her imagination became the key to unlocking it. Math didn't kill her creativity. It gave it a language. It gave it a structure. She started to see the poetry inside the equations. She built a world in her head where art and science weren't fighting each other. They were dancing together. And that internal dance, that synthesis, built the foundation for section 3, the philosophy of poetical science. This idea, born out of all that conflict, became her personal operating system for innovation. It's the real key to her genius. So what on earth is poetical science? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. It's about completely rejecting the idea that you have to choose between being an artist and being a scientist. Lovelace just knew deep down that math without imagination is just counting. And imagination without logic is just daydreaming. Real breakthroughs, she said, happen right there in the middle. where you use the power of logic to build your wildest visions. And this wasn't just some vague vibe for her. She had principles. First, look at things as they are and see the hidden potential, the unseen possibilities. Second, use logic like a tool, not a cage, to bring that vision to life. Third, understand that any set of rules, like how a machine works, is really just a new language you can learn to speak. And finally, never ever see a machine as just a pile of parts, but as an extension of thought itself. You put that all together and you get something we could call algorithmic intuition. Okay, so philosophy is great, but putting it into practice, that's another story. So in section 4, weaving logic into thought, we're going to look at the actual mental habits she used to make these big ideas a reality. Her number one tool, her secret weapon, was a technique we can call structural analogy. It sounds fancy, but it's actually beautiful and simple. You take a new, totally abstract concept that's hard to wrap your head around, and you map it onto something you already know really, really well, something concrete. It's like finding a familiar map for an unknown territory. Her most brilliant use of this is just chef's kiss. To understand this totally alien idea of a computer, she compared it to something familiar, a jacquard loom. That's a weaving machine that used cards with holes punched in them to create these super complex patterns in fabric. And she thought, wait a minute, the loom uses punched cards to tell threads where to go. The analytical engine could use punched cards to tell symbols where to go. The loom weaves flowers into silk. The engine could weave patterns in algebra. That analogy changed everything. It let her see the machine as a universal pattern weaver. But an analogy was just the starting point. Her work process was intense. She'd take an idea and then just explore every single possibility. She'd trace every logical path, calculate every outcome. She was basically running the machine inside her own head, building and debugging software decades before the hardware even existed. And the proof of this system? It's the stuff of legend. She was asked to translate an article about the analytical engine, and she did, but then she added her own notes, which ended up being 3 times longer than the original article. And hidden in those notes was an algorithm to calculate Bernoulli numbers. We now recognize it as the world's very first complex computer program. So, you put it all together, the difficult childhood, the philosophical breakthrough, the intense work ethic, and it all leads here. Section 5, the mother of modern code. This is her legacy. This is the story of how a girl whose imagination was seen as a disease became the architect of our digital world. I mean, just look at this journey. It's an unbelievable transformation. From a student trapped by logic, to a collaborator with the greatest inventor of her time, to writing the foundational text of computing, and finally earning her title as the mother of code. It just shows what a mind can do when it refuses to be boxed in. 100 years. Just let that sink in. Her vision of a computer that wasn't just for math, but for creating art, for composing music, for manipulating anything. That vision was a full century ahead of everyone else. It wasn't until the 1940s, with people like Alan Turing, that the rest of the world finally caught up to what Ada was talking about back in 1843. And that's really the heart of her legacy. She proved that the most powerful innovations happen when we tear down the walls we build between different ways of thinking. She showed us that at its highest level, technology is an act of profound imagination. She created a world where code can be poetry and an algorithm can be a masterpiece. And this is where her story becomes our story. Section 6, Coding Your Own Future. Because her life isn't just something to admire from a distance, it's a user manual, a guide we can use to find our own breakthroughs right now. So this is the real question she leaves us with, isn't it? Our world is always trying to make us choose. Are you a logic person or a creative person? An analyst or an artist? How do we follow her lead and find that poetical science in the things we do every single day? Okay, so here's a little challenge for you. This week, find one task in your life that feels kind of dry. A spreadsheet, a routine report, whatever. First, just ask, where's the unseen potential here? Then use her trick, a structural analogy. Ask, what is this really like? Compare it to something totally different, to making music, to cooking a meal, to playing a sport. Find that hidden connection. Marry the discipline of the task with a bigger, more creative vision for it. Because her story is a powerful reminder that you are so much more than your job title or a list of skills on a resume. Like her, you are a weaver of patterns. You have this incredible ability to take the threads of logic and the threads of imagination and weave them together into something totally new, something that only you can create. So, remember the core lesson of the Lovelace Code. Imagination is what creates technology, and your vision, that's the code for your future.